We're going to begin with a blend of reach and momentum from our shoulders and our ribs. So we're going to kind of play with this breathing pattern, but it will first really feel like kind of, I guess you might say, a tad bit strenuous because of the expansiveness out of your back. So your back of your mat will have a blanket stack and a bolster. So make enough height so that when you can turn to the back of your mat, you're going to reach your hands on top. If you need a blanket or a towel under your knees, add that. Kind of push your props out to the side so you got some space to the sides of your mat. And hands are on top of the bolster. And then with that momentum of the hips, you're going to reach the hips back, the knees are apart, and the spine has just a restricted amount of momentum here because you have armpits and they kind of hold you back from completely kind of unzipping and lengthening. You have some resistance, right, just from the boundary of your bones. So with your head centered of your arms, begin with the reach of your hands as you started and let your head center, and maybe it drops a little bit. And experiencing the movement of the breath through the back body. That there is expansiveness, there's limits, but at least we start with this symmetry for our shoulders. And give yourself freedom to kind of shift along. Maybe you feel the arm reach and the armpit chest kind of zigzag a little side to side. Right, and there's a little bit of motion through the armpits as well. And then shift the weight to your left, bring your hands down on the floor besides your mat on the left side and reach the hips to the back right corner. Right, so it's a side child's pose in momentum with the back. And try to let your head move down towards the arms. And then kind of sneak your way across the mat to the other side, to the right side, like you're kind of practicing your crawl. And then range through that left armpit chest, the hips now, as you feel the differences in our sides. We'll do this one more time each side, but I want you to explore that crawling effect. So when you bring your weight back equally to your knees, and then you start to move your hands in the center, kind of get a feel, how do you move through your hips? Do you kind of just poke your hips to the back right corner? Or do you kind of slide the ribs back and then reach through that right arm? I like to put for this moment, my right hand on the bolster and just get a little greater stretch through the thoracic, right through the rib cage. Okay, and we'll go to the other side. So it'll be kind of brief. Walk over to the right, kind of crawl, kind of feel if your hips kind of poke back to the left. And then maybe your hand goes up, maybe it stays down. Depends on the intensity, and recognizing that subtlety is sometimes much deeper than trying to force that sensation, right? So even a little bit less than your fullness can feel a little more intimate with what you need. So if your left arm is up or it's down, feel the waist stretch. And then we'll lower down both hands about shoulder distance, round your back to cat, chin towards chest. And then toes under, lift up your knees, stretch back to an inverted V. So whether your heels kind of bop up and down and you pedal out, or you like to work with solid motion of heels reaching or heels lifting. A welcome entry into practice is exploration. Right? So kind of getting a sense of maybe there's distractions in homes, right? So you might find that having a practice that starts with a little distracted sense of movement can bring you inwards rather than just stillness. Okay, and then let's lower our knees down, good, and let the spine come back to that cat. So the tops of the feet rest, the hips motion back and under. So it does feel like your tail has a bit of kind of scooping. It's a tail scoop. Okay, it's not a tail lift, it's a tail scoop. And neutral. Okay, let's reach for a bolster, and actually not reach for it, let's take it off the blankets. Place it in the center, get a block, place it right next to the bolster closest to your knees, and then you're gonna flip yourself so that you're sitting on your little Lego here. I think of this as like a little Lego. So I'm gonna tip my hips a little forward, and now I want you to play with how do you get onto your back with the bolster under you and the block, okay? Essential is to have your sand nearby, have your belt nearby, but once you move to the blankets, you're sort of getting yourself a little bit more cozy, especially in your neck. So take the time to experiment with this midsection being entirely supported, right? The last few moments it was vulnerable because it was just being guided by the arms reaching and the hips lifting. But now we want to get ourselves as cozy as we can on the block. Yep. And you might scoot it in closer, you might push it forward. I've known people to use 2 blocks on this. They just stack them, not stack them, but put them side to side if you're pretty long, because it might feel like it's just too tiny of a support. Okay, but the bolster should be under your ribs. And so there's an accent on the experience of openness to the rib cage. All right, take a sandbag and place it over the thigh lids. The thigh lids can stay in the crease, right? With the knees bending, you can still have that crease at the thighs. You can also explore moving the legs down. And it's kind of fun to go one side, bring it back in, and the other, and just kind of feel your postural kind of essence on your back. I know I got to spend more time on my back, just figuring out my design. Okay, so once you've got your sand across, then we let the arms relax. So there's no efforting at pulling anything or pushing. It's the opposite of efforting. Okay, so get a selective experience of creating openness from our movement of our position on the props and evoking that consciousness in the ribs, the chest, and quite truly the heart, right? The heart center is opening and a little vulnerable. Even if it's work that you're doing, just you and yourself, this can be helpful. So the place I'm trying to work with is getting my blades to kind of roll back and towards the bolster. I'm not trying to smash them down and like push them flat out. I'm actually understanding that my bolster, I could push it a little farther down, right? So my shoulders kind of roll back over them. And that helps you get the ribs up. It helps the intercostals lift up the ribs. Let the feet separate enough so that you're not feeling awkward with their rotation because they like to roll out. And breathe slow, focusing on the nose inhale and the expansiveness in the abdomen. Got the abdomen going on. As you inhale for however many counts you feel you can sustain without struggle. Or maybe it's 3 or 4. And you're ideally focusing on nostril breathing, but let's be realistic. If it feels a little claustrophobic for you with breath, you kind of hold it in those areas. Let your mouth relax as well. Relax the brain. Focus on breath. It's a funny comment, relax your brain, yet then right away focus, but get a feel that you can enable that feature of breathing to center you into your body. You know, if there's areas that might have a little pressure, like you might have more on your left side, you might have more on the back of your right pelvis. There's different areas you can start to, you know, notice. If you get still, something will come up and maybe irritate oneself, right? That's just natural experience of living. So I want you to work with what you could do to get the seam of the back to lengthen. So we'll move the sand away. You could have it up on your ribs if you kind of like sand because it's soothing. But you want to slide the feet in so the knees bend. And that should kind of help out that back spatially to, you know, just at least have a little more length, not so much grip, because when the legs are down, right, it creates that arch and the ribs and that tilt. So I like the sand because it kind of gets one side of the body to press, so then it reminds that other side to get to lengthen out, okay, or just push down and smooth out. So now you're going to lift up the right leg. Now you don't have to use your sand here. If this is feeling particularly difficult for your breathing, just remove it because it does require a little bit more breath concentration with pressure on your chest, on your breathing muscles. I kind of like hugging it, actually. It's nice to have a little sand buddy here. And then lower the right foot down, and then the left leg lifts up. Should make these into some sort of creatures, little stuffed sand bunnies or something. And lower the left foot down. Now, as you alternate, kind of feel, whether you sand or not, that the movement is helpful to stretch the back of that side of the waist, right? So my left leg comes in the left side of the back waist and the left side of spine, just lower spine stretches. You could address it goes all the way up, but we know it stretches that area. So now we're going to add a little bit extra with movement with the arms. So you're just taking a reclining walk right now and remove the sand and get a belt. We're all kind of either still or we're moving our leg at the same time. Some of us are moving, some of us are still. But when you come up to the next round, I want you to move your arms holding the belt, generous hold, wide, much wider than your shoulders. And then articulate that motion. So the arms holding the belt, reach back. Think of it as arms, not just hands. And then you move the leg in and you find that length in that small side of the back. Let's just do 2 more. So we get some idea of this leg movement. I want us to kind of lengthen the back just for a couple minutes with this exercise. And the last time the leg draws in, you're going to move your arms back, hold the belt, bring your feet together. So the soles of the feet try to touch one another and the knees move out to the level that you find some concentration in the inner thighs. But it likely picks up a little more density in the adductors, meaning it kind of feels like a thick pool, right, of circulation in those fibers, the inner thighs. The inner fibers. That's what we got going, inner fibers. Inner thigh burst. Right, if your inner thigh bursts, you must get out. But if you're not inner thigh burst, you can stay with the inner thigh burst working. And that's such a thick area for, right, the lymph. So we work on these types of shapes to stimulate the flow of lymph, to stimulate the immune system. Might as well be rock stars with immune system work, huh? So when you hold onto the belt, if you like that kind of tension, because it makes you feel like you're doing something, you could work with that. But why not start to slide your hands out so much that the arms are on the ground, as much as your arm that can touch. And then that's kind of equal. It's an equilibrium that is happening with your fibers, right? So the inner arm has a similar activity as the inner thigh. All the lymphy areas. Let's take just a few more moments here. And you know we weave from one area to the next, right? So if we're doing adductors now, we're probably going to go into the side next. Okay. Now, if your feet have a little contact, doesn't have to be overwhelming, but you can feel the inside of the feet, the soles touching. Notice when you bring the knees to point up, the carefulness of the fabric of the back just releasing. Doesn't feel like a real long stretch yet, but you're going to slide so the bottoms of the feet are touching. Down, bottoms of the feet to the ground, and scoot the feet about hips distance. And take a few moments, just feel as you let go of the belt. Okay. Slide the arms down so they're kind of hooked on that bolster a little bit. And then I want you to actually roll to the left, just with your knees, tip them left. And then we're going to move the block out, put it back overhead, and then roll the ribs to the left. And that's kind of an interesting perspective, is like rib roll movement, right? And so we're going to go left, and I want you to, if you have a ball, get one. If you have a sandbag, have it ready for this. You're going to get ready for side sage. So I know some of you have lots of different bolsters. So if you have a round one, you could use it in lieu of this one. It will give you a little deeper lift, spatialness with the rib cage, a breathing perspective that's unique, I think. And it might be a little intense if you haven't been regularly using your round bolster. It might take kind of the breath out of you a bit. So if it's a lot of breath, if you got a high bolster, what you can do to help out is to get a blanket under your hip that's next to the bolster. That'll kind of get you lifted to it. It'll help you access it. Makes it easier. So for some of us like me, I'm going to be with my flat bolster and my sand on my side. So this is one option. Either way you have a bolster, you would use this. Your blankets under your head, however high you like them, scrunch them up, move them around. And then as you reach the right arm over, the hand goes to a block near you, okay? So work towards feeling your way to things. Like if you know the block is overhead, it's not necessary that you look at it, but you just kind of feel around and use your feeler of your hand to help you sense that space from reaching your arm, right? The arm reach, whether it's open to the ceiling, like you stretch counter spin, or it's overhead, they're all ways of expanding and getting some more circulation into your breathing muscles. This is mostly about stretching the breathing muscles and strengthening the breathing muscles, right, specifically. So maybe the eyes can close. I have my head tilted a little bit back. It's not side of the head pushing down on my ear, but to me that feels kind of nice for my neck. Maybe it doesn't for everybody, so I would play with, how can you get the position of the head to be relaxed? And then stretching the muscles between the ribs via the position. So my right leg is angling down and a little bit back. So if this is a mystery leg position, you have the left leg towards the bolster. It's on the floor. It's not on top of the bolster. And then how you kind of have either minimal mobility in your ribs or hypermobility, that'll affect how you lie onto the bolster with the rib cage. Okay, and if it's too much in your back, you feel like it's uncomfortable now, what you can also do is move your right knee towards the left leg. And you can also keep it into more of a fetal position. So you could stack the legs like so. You can move your sandbag up to your side. That actually feels kind of odd to have the ball between the ankles. And interesting. I prefer the leg to stretch back, but I'm gonna play with it. And give yourself at least a minute or two to be still with the pose so you can soak it up and absorb. And let your head and neck really find whatever's comfortable, not what looks like it should be. Just situate, even if you turn your head to the left and kind of push it down into the bolster or the blankets. That might feel comfy. And those of you using a round bolster, having the head on the other bolster is probably not the most preferred because you tend to push the blankets down with your body needs, right? You know, you're going to kind of change the shape of the blanket depending on your need and the body weight in the ear. Breathing through the rib cage. Feel that expansion. And relax on the out breath. Receiving your breath. Relax on the out breath. Okay, now that you felt a little bit on the right side meaning that's the side that's stretching. Let's go ahead and move our right arm down. In fact, let's see your block. You can keep it overhead, that's no problem if you have one there. But as you move this sand, I like to kind of visualize how I'm gonna shift up onto my bolster here, but I want you to stay kind of leaning down. Now, if you have a round bolster, you're gonna switch it out for a flat one. So that requires a little bit of a costume change here with your props. But otherwise, you're gonna tip a little bit to that left hip, move the ball over so it'll be easy to reach. If you've got your flat bolster, you're gonna switch it through now. And then the rest of us are on our flat bolster. We only want one blanket behind us though, okay? So if you've got two, kind of fold one up, put it off to the side, keep your belt. And then you should get a class credit for this class today. Okay, then you're gonna get up on the bolster flat, the flat bolster, and you're gonna be moving your hips on top of that. So you're on your back. The bolster really is under your pelvis, right? This is key, not under your ribs. You might feel like it's near a rib, but it's like lumbar and pelvis, right? Okay. Now, once we got there, we're going to get a ball. If you prefer to use the block, that's fine, perfectly fine. So if you don't have a ball, use a block, but that's between the knees. And then as your knees are shifting, so you feel like, okay, from my hip to my knees, it's flush, right? It's not my knees are too far forward or squeezing in. And then arms move open and knees go side to side. So get a feel of, yeah, we do kind of play, some classes we play games with kind of elementary ranges of motion, like we're doing a check to see that we can still do them. And we started with more of the kind of reclining pedestrian motions. And now this is a little bit more swimming through the hip and the ribs. But get a feel as the body flows side to side. Maybe even let your eyes relax and gather that motion in the pelvis. Really let the pelvis experiment with movement. And it doesn't get all these ranges usually within an hour, and and a half, which is kind of what we aim for. You know, maybe not quite that long, but we are trying to range out our movement patterns in our hips and our pelvis and our spine. So the class should be helpful for your range of motion and density as well. Okay, so feel when you go to the side one more time, one more of those sides. And then when you come back into center, okay, get a feel of the knees drawing towards the chest, whether it's a block or a ball, either one is fine, okay? If it's a block, just be careful not to drop it on yourself. We've all done that where the block falls on our face. Okay, now legs go straight up. You still have something between the knees. So this is helpful, right, for a whole variety of topics, but we'll keep it with this is helpful to keep the conversation easy and light. And in the lift of the feet, I want you to circle them. So explore with that movement of the ankle bends. So nice that they're not being stepped on. Right? The legs have a little different assignment being upside down. So enjoy that. If we could just have the whole class upside down, that would be so good for us, but it's hard to think of interesting things for this much time upside down. So we range it so we get movement patterns, but once the feet move a few times each direction, and let's let the legs squeeze into the object between. Give it a few moments, keep it fresh though, so that the energetic, the container in the leg container feels an energy of concentration. I want you to keep that with the inner leg, okay? So keep that going, and then at the same time, you're gonna get a belt. So we have adductors working, all right? And then, it's like a laboratory class here. Okay, then we'll take our belt. Should get science credit. Okay, we'll take our belt and hold on to, just put it on your ribs actually. You'll need to move your ball in a moment or your block. So when you squeeze in, get that as kind of fired up as possible, like it's all pumped up, the inner thigh has circulation. And then bend the knees, remove it. And then once you're without that, you might still have some residual feelings in the adductor. So I want you to get your belt in both feet. We'll go with both feet to start because we don't want to lose that feeling. So we'll push the feet out into the belt. So it's free. The belt's not buckled up. I don't have any containment with it. But when I push out with my feet, right, the energy circulation in the legs, it probably changes somewhat from a squeezing awareness to the flow in the legs. So enjoy that for the sake of the legs. If you need to roll your shoulders under, you'll feel your ribs lift. This is a nice sequencing for the circulation in your hips and your legs. Okay, now as you bend your knees, slide the feet together, pull the belt towards your chest, and then reach your hands up and taking the left foot out so we're all on the right leg up. Lower the left foot down, and as you pull with your both hands, really, I think it's helpful to have the belt separated here so you can feel that pulley, and now the back of the leg has that concentration. Okay, so we're going to kind of go away from this inner thigh focus that we've had for a bit. Let the left foot relax, even if it's against the wall. Just let it relax. And then take the belt together with your left hand, holding it now. It's holding the right leg, and you'll cross that leg with holding onto the belt firm to the left side. And then as you cross over, feel if you can go a little bit downstream with the right leg. Okay, so I enjoy having a wall because I can, use it for some support pattern, but it's not required at all, right? You'll still feel like you're getting some massive awareness in your upper outer right leg. Lateral pulley. And the belly will likely kind of go left. It might stretch centered. Try to let your stomach area get stretched here. Yeah, it feels nice to let it stretch, especially in a twist, without trying to pull the belly in. It's already going to naturally get toned just from the shape. So enjoy that you have tone from the shape of the pose, right, for your torso. And we'll get lots more of this kind of work coming up. So when I resist with that left hand, I get a little pull. Then I'm going to bend that right knee. And then when your right knee is bending, see if you can guide the knee itself with that awareness of bending, which creates circulation up into the hip, right? In this position, you can feel the resistance holding holding with the belt. Now feel that knee bending and then take care to strengthen down to the ankle. So bring the knee to a nice bend. And then when you come back to center, everything's concentrated. You'll switch the foot up into the belt and just change a route. So right hand holds the belt, left leg crosses to the right, and left arm opens. Yeah, things done simply are sometimes very pleasing, right, to your consciousness. So if you can kind of follow that simple train of motion, and then that length into that left side might lift into your hip. You know, you might even feel it in your back. So if you have some back, ache, discomfort, use this crossover to kind of fluff out the circulation that leads into your back. And let there be resistance with that right hand holding the belt, the left knee bending a little bit, the chest open. Good, let the eyes relax. Right foot is relaxed, so you might be on the side of the foot, you might have it a little bit up. Just however it ends up is fine with the right leg. And then when you ease the mind through the breath, see if you can allow them to connect together. Now bend the left knee, and you can make this as crafty as you like. Sometimes you over position things like, oh, I must get the knee a little over to the right, a little further, and let my sitting bone move a little left, and all these things you can craft out. But sometimes just simply moving it back to center is a-okay. And take the legs both up again, so you have both legs lifting into the feet and the feet pushing out. So a little bit of finality with this one. So feel how the feet push. Recognize how this sensation is in your back, because we will come to the wall with legs up, which is certainly my favorite. And it's an interesting difference, right, when you're in the middle of the room doing any legs up versions. But you have support with the belt. And soon enough, you'll have support with the wall. But take a moment here, bend your knees. And then how about pulling real firm with your arm, your bicep muscles, pull down, bring your knees to your chest and take the belt off and start to get ready for the right side being down for side sage, okay? That for you might be, you wanna go knees side to side for a while. Maybe you're not quite ready to roll into it. You can warm up your back flesh a little that way. But then when you roll, yeah, I like to, well, I'm using the flat bolster today, but you might get your blanket stacked again on that other side for the next side. Recognize that you don't want things too spread out unless you're really, really long in the arm, right? I don't think I can get that block back there. So I got my ball, and then when you add your stand, and some of you have a round bolster now, and some of you are going to stay with your flat, okay? So we're all feeling supported. Now, when you get to this right side down, side sage. You'll lengthen. Now the sage part is how the legs are positioned, right? So you have the right knee pointing up towards the bolster on the floor. Left leg reaches back. And as that left arm stretches over, yeah, who knows where your prop is overhead? It's tempting to look, isn't it? But go for feel. It'll probably eventually show up. And as you kind of play with those movements, or how you kind of tighten up to try to find something. So it's fun to let your yoga experience, your class experience be entertaining and sometimes, but lengthen through that side. Right, sand can be on the hip, on the waist, on the ribs. And you can sort out, maybe the sand feels too much pressure on your hip, like maybe it doesn't feel right for your knee. So you can put it to your ribs. Yeah, unless you have, a breathing condition where this is not going to be a good thing for you, you're challenged with your breathing. This might be too much for some people. So it's an option, right, to have it on your rib cage. But if you're feeling like you can inhale and exhale, slow and deep, then you likely can add sand and strengthen your breathing muscles. Not only this area, but also in the front of your diaphragm. Everything's getting kind of pulled into a little bit of restriction here. So strengthening the breathing. Okay, if your head relaxes, that would be nice. It doesn't have to look a certain way, but it needs to relax for you. And the hand reaching or opening or resting on the side. Okay, so with this motion, ribs, right? And keep it, kind of travel with your awareness, because we're going to, keep moving along like a little bit of a chain of events, right? Everything's going to follow like you're on a path to get somewhere, like you're mapping it. So we're mapping with the left side lengthening. All right, we're going to kind of keep awareness here with this left side band in a little bit. Okay, now as you lower down the sand, now this doesn't need to stay, so I take the sand away. If you like to stay in the pose longer, feel free to do so. If it feels like it's nourishing, you like to absorb the situation in your breathing and your waist, then you just maintain it for as long as you like, okay, up to 15 minutes. So then we bring the knees in, those of us moving on. We're going to roll to the right, and then you're going to use your flat bolster to sit on top of. So I want you to take a seat on your bolster, okay? Yeah, so we've got our blankets. I think I'm just going to keep my blankets, pull them in so they're next to my bolster. And then we'll take a block. That one behind you needs to come forward too, so you've got some security here. But you'll put a block in front of your bolster, and then just put your foot on top. The right foot would be nice. The right foot is the right foot. All right, so moments ago we were working with this side awareness, so we're not going to forget that, or maybe we will. All right, so putting a sandbag on the right thigh. It's the obvious kind of one that you can see in your view lifted versus the other side. And if this left side doesn't feel good, poking down, and it feels like it bobs up, then what you do is put a block or ball under it. I don't want you to put so much height under it though that you start to feel tightness here. So if you feel tightness in your front thigh, like this thigh, well actually more like hip flexor area, then you want to let the leg go down, right? So I'm trying to stretch this area this way. But if it hurts, you put some under it. Just don't want you to pull it up so high that it pinches more. Okay, so try to stretch it down. Left arm goes up. Let's turn it for the first one. Let's turn to the right, so our left hand to the right knee. And as we rotate, we can get a feel of this spinal spacious, even though it's turning, twists are hydrating, right, for the spine. So, but we don't want this, I don't want to show you what a back twist because it'd be bad for my back, but if I round my back and try to twist, then it would be compressing, right? So I want to actually feel an arch through my back, like I have a lift of my chest, that's good enough. And then you're lifting tall and turning. Right, so it's like you're presenting, right? You're lifted. Okay, if I round my back and twist, then I'm not doing any good. So even if you're twisting, and you're not getting points for rounding your back to twist, but rotate through the ribs, and then bring the right arm forward, cross it over the left, and give yourself a hug. Okay, kind of feel what that reality is when you give yourself a hug. Okay, if the shoulder blades kind of pull open, and just what is that going into in the back? So spreading out the back. Okay, and turn one more time to the right. Left hand to right knee or thigh. Turn to the right. Right hand tries to kind of creep back. Right. If the blanket's too high, take one off. If your arm is longer than mine, it probably is too high, I imagine. You can always put it back on. Okay, but get that right shoulder to move back. Okay, hug again. You get a couple hugs today in class, 2 on each side for sure. Okay. All right, so now that we've had that motion, right, we've kind of swung the waist to the right, back center. And the waist can take a lot of movement, right? If you kind of go side to side right now, you'll notice it can tolerate, right? And the organs, that nice massage into them. But now we're gonna let the arms relax. Take the sand, or actually keep it for a moment. Let's try this for the hip for just a change. We're gonna move our block, the other block we have, not the one under your foot, the other one. Reach it to the top left corner of your space, and then try to keep spine long so you're not rounding in your back, you're trying to lengthen out of your back. Reaching onto that block, you probably need it all the way up on its height for you to get a substantial reach. Good, and make sure that the spine has some length. There you go. Yep, not a rounding of the back though. I know it's tempting. Well, maybe I'm rounding. That's not a good model for this. So let the spine lengthen, even if you're like on your tippy fingers. Okay. Now this is when we kind of have a change of focus through the spine, although it's still lengthening, but it's going to go forward. So we're going to come back center, take our sand off, blankets both in. If you only have one, put the other one on top. Pigeon pose. Right leg goes back. Okay, okay. Here's a new one. Okay. So the spine in the last few moments, right, we were focusing on sitting bones and then into spine, and maybe you were, but now it's like different. It's not, you're not really focusing from sitting bones to spine. The sitting bones can't do a lot here. So I want you to use if you have that second bolster, you can put it under your elbows versus the block. Sometimes it's nice to have more padding versus, these pointy things. But you choose whatever you have under your elbows, a little bit of height under them, whether it's blocks, pillows. So you're not completely rounding in your back. That's why. So, even sleeping pigeon, we want to find that there's a little stimulation through the back range. Right, and that's what keeps our spine supple, is these types of positionings. Right, I mean, that's kind of what cats have, like real suppleness. Right, this shape is patterned repeatedly, right? And lengthened and moved and motion. So that our spine get a little of that absorption. Okay, now if you feel your hip, that's probably what's most essential here, is the left hip. Okay, so let's change it up. Take the back leg to bending, and it probably only bends and goes this direction, we hope, right? So the foot goes up. And that might make the upper body sink, like pressure, right? So just get a feel of that stretch of the front of the right thigh. I see a little bit of this quadricep. And then for me, I get my hip stretches more. The left hip gets a deeper stretch. Okay, let's come down with the foot, and then we're going to actually shift onto the bolster under our belly. So I want you to move your blocks away. Let's see. Toes under right foot, hands open, and your resistance, your main prop is the floor here, of course. But when you come up with your left leg sliding back and meeting the right leg, next to it, you might walk out the legs a little bit, just get a feel when they're fully lengthened, right? You can't get a full stride, but get a little bit of that motion through the calves, and then lower down the knees. Turn the bolster so it's spine-wise under you, and then simply lie down your core on the bolster, but get a feel here for your elbows down in Sphinx pose, the hands relax, and then feel where there is a natural arch. Where is the arch in your back? It's probably different than where it's been earlier, right? It was like low back was very distinct with the bolster here, right? It'd be on your back of your pelvis, so this low back would have the majority of the arch. And I'm hoping now it moves up the spine a bit. You might feel between the blades, strengthening there. Yeah, and your head doesn't have to be pulling at the neck this way. You might have your chin tuck in a little bit. Yeah, not easier though, because you put more weight into your elbows. You have to kind of find, That's taught all directions on this. Most of the time it's head lifting, but that doesn't work for everyone's neck. Okay, now take a few moments where the hands slide back, the glutes usually grip. It's like a initiates glute wake up. But if you can let the glutes in, I know they're going to grip up, but relax it a little bit. Put some relaxant in the glutes. And then hands push, elbows in by your sides. Lengthen through your chest, through your throat, and then lift up and try to use your core medley to get that lift of the chest up. Right? The glutes may not fire very much here. See if you can use the strength in your spine. The reason I don't want you to fire up in your glutes is so that you're not going to tighten your back. Right, so we are working on the Psoas stretch here. Oh, okay. Now, that doesn't mean the back won't feel it though, right? I feel quite a bit building here. So as you push into your hands and then move your hip bones back to table, step the right foot up and out to the right side and turn the bolster, okay, across again, and walk the right foot, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel to the left, and then you're on your right leg pigeon. I think that worked out okay. It was pretty good. All right, so now we've got no sand, right? We got maybe a bolster under our elbows or a block set or a bunch of pillows, right? Or a creature visiting you. But when you feel the position of the spine, I know it's a constant situation when you start thinking about how the head pulls down and the spine moves here. But maintain maybe some, even closing your eyes and feel the centerpiece of the body. And let the breath expand. That can be quite helpful in your back muscles. So work with that expansion of the ribs with your breath. And you can do that anytime. Right? You're free to breathe. You would be good to. Even the best thing you can do, right? And so just expansion of the ribs. And unless you're trying to hide and you want anyone to hear you, right? You now feel the movement of your breath. Maybe hear it. Okay, now the weight, I know it feels more satisfying to kind of drop down your upper body, but we're trying to keep spine strong. Not to say some of you might take your blocker or bolster out and just put your elbows down, your head on the floor. Some people like that. Bend your left knee and then feel how that foot draws or it moves. It doesn't happily move towards your seat, but you're trying to get it to angle. Yeah, if you were to look back at it, yeah, I think after so many of these, I figured out how to move it, but sometimes it will swing to the middle, right? Which is a little difficult on the knee. So you want to try to get it to move straight in. If it swings to the middle, it might be that you want to kind of move your hips a little side to side until you feel like it can move towards you. And if it hurts, don't do it. But if you find this just doesn't work for my knee at all, don't practice this piece. But lower the left foot, let your weight move to your right buttock, so you're shifting over. It's like a typewriter shift over. It's exactly like that. And then you bring the left leg forwards and your foot goes on top of a block, right? Your right knee automatically is already kind of down on this side because you have pigeon pose with the right leg, so that's kind of cool. But these are the things that I find exciting. Put a sandbag on the left thigh, a ball under the right knee if it's needed. If it doesn't feel good with your leg here, then you put something under it. That's kind of simple. It doesn't have to be a blocker ball. It could be a towel. But here we're going to reach our right hand to the left knee and turn. Yeah, I think we've got the blankets back here still, so that's helpful. If you want to go down to one blanket, go for it. It's okay. And then as you rotate, get that directional motion so you can feel continuous kind of stretch of the breathing muscles, right? Each of the spatial rib to thoracic, all connected. Yeah, it kind of feels nice to expand in the inhale and then feel the rotation on the exhale. Even if it's just that, yes, I'm turning. That can be all your assignment is. Left arm comes forward, you turn forward too, and then give yourself a hug so you can feel where the spine is centered and the hands reach around and the blades open. I mean, do they open? I guess I would think of them as opening in this position, but just let your blade stretch. Turn left, right hand to left leg. Feel maybe a different spot with holding onto the leg, maybe a little below the knee, maybe right on the patella. That to me feels good. Some of you might be upper leg a little bit. If I hold below the knee, it seems to feel difficult on the inside of my left knee, like the meniscus. Feels like it's strained. So just be careful on the knee pressures and rotate. This is going to work the ankle too. So there's more areas than the knee awareness, that socket area. So rotate. And then hug again. Left arm around so it's the top arm. Hug again. Okay. We give a few more moments. This is kind of our completion cycle in the middle of the room before we go to our wall space. So I want you to take a few more moments sitting on the bolster. Okay. And then let the spine find its natural arch. And then as you let go with the hands on the shoulders, roll the shoulders back. Take the sand off, bring the feet together, the sand on top of the feet when they're together. So the sand just goes across the top of the feet. And then feel the natural hold of the shins and spine is feeling motion inwards. or upwards. Maybe it's upwards for some. Yeah, shoulders roll back. Okay, so now we've got all these different arches and ribs, and the challenge might be that you tend to pull the belly in, but your focus is on the postural assignment, right? To lift up, and whether that's part of your what you try to access to do it, then that's an issue. So you want to work with up and letting your abdomen relax. Yeah, that's interesting. So let's take our sand off, giving you just a collection of movements. And then we're going to actually get ourselves to our wall space. So I want you to have a space at the wall so that you can have a bolster to the side, and you really don't need the bolster on the ground. Well, actually, we're not facing away from the wall because our back's going to be at the wall to start. You're going to have your bolster to the left side. You're going to have your blocks on the mat, sandbag off to the side. Belt is not needed, but blankets are likely needed right now. So I want you to get a blanket and place it so it's under the knees. Right, so you got a cushion, okay, for the knees. Your other blanket goes off to the side, so you got some space here. Okay, now with the knees down, it tends to kind of sink the hips a bit. So what I want you to focus on is like the hips are going to go up, okay? So with this arch in the back, just move your blocks a little off to the side of the mat, so they'll be easy to get a hold of in a while. Spread the hands out so you get a generous width of your hands across your mat. And then once the spine is in a natural tilt, the arms kind of bend here, right? Usually they're not completely suctioned in. So give a little bend and lift up your knees and stretch your heels either just a little bit up on the wall. So I like to have them on the baseboard tilted up. It feels kind of nice for my balance. If I put my heels to the floor, it's a lot of work, right, to get that stretch. So you decide on the movement, but it's going to change the circulation into your sinuses, so I'll sound different, all those things to flush out. But go with getting upside down and let the weight of your head start to stretch out the spine. It doesn't feel easy, but it does stretch your spine this way. And it's straight, but it's lengthening. It's not rounding back. Okay. All right. Now, as you bend through the knees, like you're starting to go forward, like you're going to try a push-up kind of action, but your hips are too high. I want you to bring the left foot into the center behind you. So the left foot heel is either up at the wall or it's a little bit down towards the floor. I'm going to have mine a little up. Step the right foot forward and take 2 blocks. Each hand gets a block. And measure the momentum here so that your knee is above the ankle. I would just keep it so pure, simple, that your left knee goes to the blanket and you stretch out your left quad. So you just use that momentum. Getting the knee down can be a relief here. It's also a deep stretch. So feel that left thigh pace itself to stretching, lengthening the left quadricep. Yeah, push a little bit into the ground space, right, with your hands. You can kind of feel, kind of mosey a little bit side to side. Feel the momentum of the right knee forward. And then just push into your hands and lean back. So let the spine still lengthen. So the blocks under my hands are quite helpful for my approach in my spine. You could put your blocks a little higher. That's kind of helpful. Just be a little careful how this pushes on the left knee. So I want you to be broad out with those arms, kind of broaden them out with the blocks. And then feel how you distribute, because it's mostly in the back body onto the knee, isn't it? Right, that's more of the pressure. So I want you to get a feel for this without the knee down. So roll forward onto the bottom of the right foot, lift up the back knee, and now the back heel could maybe come towards the floor. Yikes, that feels something else on your calf. So your heel could be up, your heel could be down, but lift up the right foot. So I've got both hands are on blocks, but you're trying to get your toes up. So it's a reverse lunge. You know what can be fun on this one is to put a ball under your foot, right? You can get, if you want to kind of play games right now, you can get your ball to stay. You can get the ball under your foot, and then it's a little easier on the ball to hold it because you're not tensing up as much. You just kind of land your foot on the ball, and there you are. That's nice. I like that. This ball is coming in handy. Well worth it. Okay. So as I get a feel of that reach down into the leggings, I hope you feel your legs from this. Okay. Now, as we slide back, make sure that you're not stepping on the ball to step forward. You'll bring your left foot forwards and then take a moment in a forward bend. So the blocks can go away front. They can just go bye-bye. You can lower your head down and let your head nod side to side. You can hold the back of your legs. I prefer on this one to put my hands onto my elbows and work on that traction for my back and my shoulders too. You step your feet as far apart as you like. So if this is too cramped up, just scoot them a little bit out, as long as they're parallel. And let the spine and the legs stretch. Head down is the key. Surrender the weight of your head. Okay, now let go and change the lunge. We only have one other side here. So blocks in, right leg goes back, and let's start with that knee down, just because it does seem like a helpful addition to start with the knee low for the collection of stretch into your quad. If you prefer to be up a little bit with it, that's fine. You can stay with kind of a low lunge with the knee just hovering over the blanket, or use the wall right actively with your foot. Really get a feel of how your thigh creates the circulation. Just the stepping creates circulation, but it's just so different than when we're walking, when we kind of feel the way of movement, right? So we slow it down and we take pieces of it and we take a stretch. That's kind of what we do. These are all familiar patterns of movement. You're just dissecting them. So get a feel for how the positional traction, like see how you work with gravity. Because usually, I tend to feel like I can find a good lunge and just kind of be a little mellowing with it. But also I can go too far and then, kind of feel irritated, which might be what happens by now. Okay, so get a feel for that movement of the thigh. And then see if you can push your foot into the wall. Push, push, as you lift the knee. Right, so my challenge is not to push my hips back as much as I normally would. Just push back into your foot and then lift that knee. And then just see kind of how that motion, shaky likely. I mean, you got bones that are trying to hold themselves up off of the ground. Just seems like they shake up. And then when you start to lean back, remember last time we did this lean back, the reverse lunge from being down. This time we're going to be up and you can start to reach your heel down. Mine's going to be at the wall a little bit. And then the left foot toes up. I'm going to kind of smush a ball under that foot, right? So it's not exactly under my heel at all. It's really under the center of my foot, right at the below the arch, right? It's above my heel, and it's wherever it fits if you're using the ball. And then if you lose the ball a little bit, you really lose it. You feel like you're worried about things. So use it or don't use it. You don't have to. You can go without the ball. If you don't have one, it doesn't work anyway, does it? So as we lean back, see if you can let that spine Whew, the spine of that left leg really stretches, right? The hamstring, the calf, the back line. All right, now my hands are doing lots of energy of pushing, right? I'm starting to pour into them a little bit. So we're going to shift about. So I want you to let the body weight lean back. Okay, if you've got a ball, kind of move it aside, get it away. And then let the body weight tilt forward through that lunge and lower down. And then left foot steps back. And then we're going to take a bridge pose. So I want you to move your blocks over to the side, shift down from your blanket. If you need to do child's pose right now and lean back, that's fine too. But I'm going to try to keep it so our focus stays kind of significant. So you're going to roll onto your back and then bring your feet up the wall. So head is on a blanket. You're going to put a block between the knees. Okay. And I would keep your other block nearby. You might use it for this bridge pose. The block or the ball, it can be either one. If you don't prefer the block, use the ball. But you want to squeeze in, and the ball's nice because it responds, right? That's the gift of that, is you create that resistance and that toning through the adductors. So get a feel when you touch in, and when the feet feel that pressure and the natural arch through the spine. Okay, so I want you to feel when you push, and then as you lift up your hips, feel the motion through the spine. Feel the weight into the wall, into the feet. The feet might feel like they're a little far down, so you can walk your feet up the wall. I want you to feel comfortable with this lift. Now I'm just pointing my fingers to my spine because I want to make sure that that spine space is lengthening. Right, these are good positions for our spine care. And then we let the arms lower down towards the wall, so they stretch to the wall as the spine lowers down. Okay, so I want you to come right back up. So you're pushing into your feet and lifting. If you get all the way down, then you kind of you don't want to get back up. You already lose steam, I think. So lift and lower. It's almost as this right before you get to the tail end of that lower. Then you get a little energy, breathe, and push into your feet and lift back up. Okay, so take it one more time. This is really getting your legs. Now your glutes cannot do anything but fire, right? So they're the opposite of that last one we did on our belly. Okay. Now I want you to try to get this to kind of line up and loosen the spine. So now as you lower down and the buttocks relax, bring your knees to your chest and take the blocker ball and just take a moment here, actually move it away, the blocker ball, hands on around the knees or below to the shins or the back of the legs, whatever you feel better holding, and let the spine give a nice stretch into the back. Yeah, feel how the legs are pushing towards the right and left side of the abdomen. Well, mostly actually the digestive tract, right? That's what they're stretching into. So with the breath, it's massaging that area. Okay, now the feet go by themselves to the wall. Well, they were there before, but there's no block in between. And then when you lift up this last time with the bridge, we're going to use the block under our back. So we need just the block, right? That's going to be the key item. So I like to sometimes be kind of la-di-da, just have my hands on my ribs and be sure my breath is below that area, the diaphragm. So I just kind of notice the puffing. Yeah, and then the relaxing of the core. Just make sure everything's operating on natural. Now, my arms aren't exactly the same position and pressure. So I take a moment and get my blanket in. I'm kind of a fan of the blanket under my head for bridge pose some days. And then as you push into your feet, I want you to lift up and then notice that this breathing area, it changes a little bit on its puffiness, right? Because now you're putting this area in demand. when you push into these poses, it's very challenging on the lungs. So you have to kind of work with that resistance. It'll still recover, right? But you're working with getting the inversion. And then put a block under the back of your pelvis. If you want your block to be at the low height, that's fine, or the mid height. Some like to use the wall because when you walk your feet up the wall, hips distance, some of us can get the block to the highest height, but be careful, right? Because if that hurts, if it hurts a spine space, not a great thing to keep pushing. If it's tough on your chin and your neck, then what you can do is remove the blanket entirely. And then that will definitely fix that issue. So I'll lower my feet down to the floor next to the wall, right there at the wall. And this is my favorite way of doing this bridge pose. I can't get the block this high up comfortably when I'm in the middle of the room, not with comfort. So using my feet high up at the wall allows me to kind of get that angle. And for some of you, the block might be at the second height. And for some of you, if you want to get the hips up, but the one block doesn't do it, you can have your feet at the wall, push, lift, and take 2 blocks at the second height, not the first one. That's too much push in the back. Make sure it's not under your ribs, but under the back of your pelvis. And then bring your feet down. This might feel really cozy too. Okay, so you could do that. You can also do that with the blocks high up. Right, that's even maybe more comfortable than the kind of jabbing one block idea. It's a little wider span. We'll play with that. Feel the hip flexor stretch, right? The higher the block, the more it stretches here. And then I do like the idea of no blanket if I have my hips as high. So you decide, depending on your block height, whether it's low. Be careful not to roll your head side to side because of how this stretches the neck. And then relax your throat. Stimulate the circulation into the thyroid, parathyroids. Yeah, and be cautious here. If you feel your back is a little bit tense from the position, work on opening the chest more. Moving the belly with the breath. Okay. And then we'll walk our feet back up the wall if you don't have them there now. And you'll push into the feet and then slide the blocks away or block. Lower the spine slowly. Yeah, let the spine really get a feel of moving down slowly. Okay, once it's down, you're going to slide back. So if your blanket was behind you, you just kind of slide back to it. Push your feet down to get away from the wall. And then stretch with the right leg down so it's actually the foot is at the wall. And cross that left leg over to that bolster on the right. Okay, it should be over there. If it's not, you just get it. And if you have a ball, you'll place that to the sacrum. Or if you don't have one, don't even worry about it. You don't have to add a block or anything. This is just an add-on that's an anchor. And then a sandbag on the outer left thigh is very nice. It's splendid to have the sandbag for this pose. Yep. All right, so we've got that support. The openness at the ribs, the expansiveness that comes from twisting is really in full effect for this position. Yeah, seated twist, not so much, prone twists, but reclining it can work out. Yeah, so these final few poses, we got this one, the other side, and the legs up. So savor what you have here with the opportunity, effective breathing. So feel if you're trying to get excited with the breath and over pulse, you want to find that there's some slowness and a little bit of calmness with the breath. And the head doesn't have to be turned to complete, it could be halfway. halfway pose. Twisting one half. And try to let the breath be a little lower in the core so that when we get to legs up the wall, you can really establish that strength in the diaphragm. Okay, now when we have this rotation on this side, left hip, take a few more moments so we can soak it out. It's a good 2 to 3 minute pose. If your leg falls to sleep, it's too long. Okay, now determine that there is weight in your hips. Just let them be on the ground. Hip full. And then move the ball, the sand, and we start to go to the other side. So that means we need to move a bolster. Usually means a little bit of prop changes, but as we motion, keep the blanket under your head. If you want to bring your feet down and the center of the hips for a moment, that would be helpful to feel the back pressing into the ground. And then getting the bolster to the left side and cross the right leg over there. Okay, so connect the dots here, left leg down. It still turns over. Remember, your hips are motioning your right leg over, so everything kind of rolls to the left as far as from your navel center down, right? So you want to find the cross-sectional rotation. And then from the thoracic, that's where it's still turning, but really at the chest, you want that to try to flatten out and open. So I have a ball into the sacrum area, does low back area, a little bit down below that to the gluteal space, and then you place the sand on the outer right thigh, and then you let the right arm open. This helps the chest flatten out that way. So if the shoulder is not going down this way, you might have to put a blanket under it. This is, I think, something I really notice in not necessarily newcomers to practice, but there's some that this is just a really guarded area and it doesn't go open. And it's a bit of a trouble, right? Because it tends to tighten up into your arms and then your wrists and your hands. And, this can start to create inflammation here. So I think openness is good. If it hurts to do that, put something under your arm so you can start opening this branch, because this goes to the heart, heart meridian, right? That's important. Heart and lung meridian. So open the chest and turn your head to the right. And one side might go easier than the other. Just notice, accept. Breathing slowly. Exhale completely. Now with that feel of the chest open and the ribs in motion, but also the hip too. Right, so once that leg is crossed over, get a feel for the line of awareness through the spine. And then we'll move the ball if that's there. We don't need it anymore. And the sand, we'll use it on our last pose coming up right now. So keep it nearby. But as you come around, you might find the nice way to go from this is just to roll to the left. And then when you push to come up, we'll take our bolster to a wall. And let's just go one bolster. Yes, there's some poses where you stack them up and you create a lot of intensity, but we'll just keep it simple for the spine. So what I'm going to do is have my other blanket here for my body. So as you sit up next to the wall. You gotta sit up kind of a little bit here. You gotta lean into the wall. So you're gonna push your seat back to the wall, and the arm, let's say your left shoulder is your happy shoulder. You'd probably start by going down the left hip, okay? If your right shoulder's better, you're gonna sit onto your right hip, okay? Because you gotta take that arm through and then get to lift up. So part of that rotation you just did on your spinal twist is gonna help you get upside down too. So it's just repetition, do it over and over again, practice, get coached. And then when you find that your back is on, the back of the pelvis is on a bolster, then you can get your sandbag. And yeah, this has its challenges, doesn't it? When your feet swing off the wall and you bend through the knees. Sometimes your back kind of pinches up onto that bolster so you feel supported. But I want you to get a feel where you have the natural arch to the spine. And you have your feet flexing. And then take the blanket. I would put a blanket on into your core because and you might even make it so it's more blanket, it's kind of onto your chest and then onto your core body. You can even unfold it so it's wider out to the sides and underneath your arms. But as that kind of feeling of swaddling is the idea of the blanket, you kind of wrap yourself into it. And then you have your feet kind of swaddled. And then you let your spine be supported at the top with the blanket under the neck. And remove any hardware that you have on your face. If you like a little bit of a curl with the blanket under your neck, you can play with it as long as you feel like it's comfortable in your jaw. Sometimes plain blanket with a tiny bit of curl is best, just a little itsy bitsy. And then opening the arms and settle the brain. And then feel how the brain moves back. Or maybe it's your mind moves back. I mean, one of them is anatomical. One has these creating factors. So the ideal is to relax into the anatomical. Breathing in slow. Feel the abdomen, the lower abdomen expand. And relax. Even a few moments that you feel anatomical, right? Just being, existing versus busy thinking. Just flow into that state. Listen to your breath. Now, as you return awareness into the experience of your feet flexing, and maybe the sand doesn't feel that heavy for you, like you can keep that resistance on there. Maybe even the stretch is minimal, but it's almost this gravitational direction, it's just moving the direction back into the pelvis. It's weight bearing for the pelvis. So that's the key with this one, with our sand on our feet. We can all use that, right? That strength factor. Okay, now as we shift our sand off the feet, you might slide the legs so they move away from the wall, focus, bend the knees. And then as you take the sand away, feel the feet maybe up the wall, maybe the feet together, the knees apart. Maybe that feels comfortable for you. or the opposite, knees in towards your chest, lengthwise. Yeah. So as you get a feel coming into this next stage of just simply sitting together, we feel the spine stretched completely. And you might even want to end the session just kind of lying down and push away from the wall, eyes relaxed, not even sitting up, and that's fine. So as I roll towards the side, either you stay onto the back or come around to sitting with your back to the wall. You find your line with the back muscles, feel anatomical, right? Kind of a thought process right now for me versus like mentally efforting. Just kind of notice your natural bends and flows internally. And then let your hands are either resting on your heart if you're on your back, or they slide up to unity in front of your heart in a prayer position. And let's momentarily breathe in, feeling that flow through the nose, and exhale, bowing into the space.